This is Will Buchanan reporting for the Walk for Liberty. Today is May 22nd, 2008, day 39. Fortunately, the wind has died down significantly since yesterday. Perhaps it's because of all the clouds. It has cooled down enough today, though, that I'm having to wear gloves and a stocking cap. Or for all you cool teenagers, a beanie. Brooke was commenting this morning that she thinks this landscape looks very bucolic. This looks like a Jawa abode. Brooke had mentioned recently that she thought her feet were getting bigger from all this walking. I thought she was just half joking. However, this morning when I had put on my socks, I thought I had mistakenly put on hers because they felt too small. I found out I had put on mine after all, so maybe there is something to that. And I have to admit, the edge of my shoes does feel closer to my toes now. I have been thinking about investing in an old fixer-upper. We had an interesting encounter yesterday with a park ranger. The day before, we had asked another ranger where we could dump our gray water, which is the water left over after you do your dishes or wash your hands in the sink. He had pointed out a grate in the ground where we could go to dump it. So we backed up our RV, connected the hose, and started dumping the gray water into the grate. Not 5 minutes into it, the head ranger blasted over to us in his pickup like he was on a mission. He informed us in no uncertain terms that what we were doing was against the law. That the only way we were allowed to dispose of gray water there was to use state-approved 5-gallon containers, which we could then go dump into the grate. He said there was just a 55-gallon container under the grate, and once it was filled up, it was done, and no one else would be able to dump into it. However, he was also a little inconsistent because he at another time implied that the water would eventually drain out. Indeed, when I went back today and looked, I didn't see any of the gray water at all left under the grate. Plus, there were many of those grates in the park, and the park was practically empty, so even if it took a few hours to drain out, it's not like we were inconveniencing anyone. That's really one of the problems with laws and bureaucracies. There's no choice in the matter, it's one size fits all, and there's no deviation from it. One thing I've observed since starting our walk and staying in parks is that almost all the park rangers are gruff and bureaucratic. The impression I get is that most people hold rangers in high regard and think of them as caretakers of the land. And what all they really are glorified bureaucrats. Before they started their job, they were probably energetic and optimistic. They probably wanted to become a ranger because they loved wildlife and wanted to become a steward of the land. However, after getting their job, they probably soon realized that all they were was an employee of the state and a bureaucrat, and became deadened by all the paperwork and reports they had to file. Indeed, the one ranger I've encountered so far that seemed happy was the one that told us where we could dump our gray water. But the head ranger told me the other one hadn't been a full ranger for too long, so apparently because of that, he hasn't lost his enthusiasm yet. I have noticed that the employees working at the private parks we've stayed at have been much more helpful and friendly. Probably because they have an incentive to care about their customer base, because they want to stay in business. Brooke and I decided we want to claim this as our castle. Hopefully the solid rock will shield us from the power lines overhead. I really wish someone would invent smell-o-vision already. An old road path with no guardrails on either side. Poor Brooke's feet are really bothering her today. And it's not just the blisters, she said it's actually the muscles in her feet. So she's thinking about taking a day off tomorrow. Interesting, U.S. government property. At least they don't mince words and say it's public property. If it's supposedly for the people in these Indian tribes, why can't individuals in these tribes own this land instead of the U.S. government? I think it's funny that the government is so bureaucratic they think a stop sign is necessary here. Brooke, notice these interesting rock formations along the cliff. It kind of reminds me of elephant feet. Cop pulled a trucker over up there. Again, I'm not really brave enough to do a real cop watch until I get to New Hampshire. Cop Watch is a program which I believe was started by students at Cal Berkeley. You should have at least 2 people and a video camera, and ideally some kind of press badge or pass that you've made up. Anyone with a blog can consider themselves part of the press. For example, I think of myself as part of the press because of having this video blog. The idea of Cop Watch is to video record the cops when they've pulled somebody over or when they've stopped somebody on the street, to make sure they're just doing their job and not infringing on an individual's rights. If they know they're being recorded, they'll be less likely to plant drugs or do something else nefarious if they need a bust or if they just don't like the person. Since they're supposedly public servants, there should be no problem if you video record them doing their job. Of course, they often don't like being recorded, which is why it's very important to have at least 2, if not 3 people, and to have some kind of press badge made up. I believe their website is either copwatch.org or copwatch.com. We went 7.68 miles, and here are our GPS coordinates. This is Will Buchanan for blog.walkforliberty.com, signing off.